Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in this amazing world. Welcome to Ultra Life Today. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Bellew.
I'm the other half, Adam Payne.
Okay, we have a really cool show today, Adam. I met a guy a few years back over the phone, had gotten our name like so many people do from someone that actually said something great about us.
Wow.
So anyway, was on the phone with a guy, met him, named Logan Duvall, and as our relationship began to open up, he invited us to be on I think a Facebook Live post at some point in time and talk a little bit about Ultra Botanica.
Yep.
And but in the course of our friendship, I learned that he had been on a journey with his young son when he and his wife had gotten the pronouncement from a doctor that their young son of 5 years old had cancer.
Wow.
With all that said, I'd like to welcome author Logan Duvall of Father's Heart, and also Me and McGee Market in North Little Rock. This is like one of these places where you want to just pull off to the side of the road. It's kind of a destination. If you get on TripAdvisor, it's like literally rated in like the top 10 on TripAdvisor of places to go in and around Little Rock.
That's pretty cool.
It's really cool. And
so you're listed as a tourist, like a stop.
I love a destination. And I love, if you read a little bit about Logan's philosophy, they're like, we're not that big and we don't want to be that big because we like keeping it personal. We like building relationships with people. That's our kind of people. I'm glad it's just next door to Arkansas.
Is.
Hey, Logan Duvall, welcome to Ultra Life Today. We're so glad to see you today,
Thanks
brother.
for having me, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us, first of all, because I happen to know, and I'll give a little spoiler alert here, I happen to know you literally became entirely focused on this journey with your son. But I have to ask you this. Prior to your journey with your son and his health challenge, did you have a huge interest in alternative health, natural healing, agriculture, clean food? What's your background? How did you end up being the Me and McGee Market guy? And then I know you've got agricultural things you do on the side as well. So tell us about you.
Yeah, well, so I was in a way always kind of drawn towards that kind of functional, natural. I just like animals, like being outside the woods, just enjoying nature. So that from that perspective, but no, I definitely wasn't great on clean eating or anything until Lander was diagnosed. Me and McGee Market is named after my grandparents. They did that. It started kind of by accident with pecans. They collected pecans from the property and sent my grandpa out to sell them, and that was kind of how it started.
Oh my gosh!
And then they put in a little garden, and people started pulling in off the highway and saying, "Hey, can we get stuff out of there?" And my mom said,
"Oh, that's awesome.
Why don't y'all just build a little farm stand and just sell the produce y'all grow?" And it's just retirement money for them. And so that's how the market started. Grandpa got esophageal cancer after a terrible battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and cardiac issues, and so that really piqued my awareness towards cancer. Was my grandpa. Their last name was McGee, so it was a play on the Me and Bobby McGee song.
You bet.
That's awesome.
And so that really, when he ended up passing away, I just left where I lived and moved down here just to try to help him, wrap it up, grow, see what we could do, learn.
Okay. Well, so when your son was diagnosed, tell me exactly how that unfolded. Tell me what was going on, because my recollection is that you're looking at a really robust, healthy 5-year-old boy, right? And then all of a sudden, tell me how the evolution.
Yeah, what happened?
We were at the market playing. It was July, so they were out in a sprinkler. I have 4 kids, but my oldest 2, they were out playing and in the sprinklers, sunny, just being kids in the summer. I even have a picture of that day to where he looked like the a perfect bill of health 5-year-old. So that evening we got home and made dinner, went through our routine, and sit down finally just on the couch just to start watching a little TV and veg out. And he says, "Hey, Dad, my pea's orange." Right.
Oh my gosh!
Stopped and I was
What?
like, "What? What?" So I went in there and it was blood. It was pink, and so just started just what in the world did he eat? Beets? Is it blueberry? I just trying anything I possibly
Right.
could, but tried to get him in a pediatrician. The first thing the following morning they were out, so I was like, you know what, we got a local children's hospital. We're going, and so we sat there for the majority of the day, and I remember just what in the world is going on, and seeing a group of doctors right outside that little glass, little rectangular glass, and they were all very serious and all in their white coats, and I knew, man, whatever they're about to walk in and tell me is not going to be good.
Wow.
And was your wife actually with you that day, hanging out with you
Yeah,
there?
so it was actually Lander's mom and I were divorced at the time. So my wife was there. Lander's mom was there.
Okay.
Lander's mom's
Okay.
mom was there, and they were both pregnant. So my ex-wife and my wife are both in this room, sitting there pregnant.
That must have been
Wow.
quite a sight. So
Wow.
what? Just for our listeners' sake, Logan, what kind of cancer was your little one diagnosed with?
William. So he was. It's kidney. It's a kidney cancer. It had metastasized. He
Okay.
was stage 4 when we found it.
So where had it spread to
It
at the
had
time?
spread to his lymph nodes and then to his chest wall, which is kind of abnormal. It's normally inside the lung, so that was something that was new. We didn't really know if that was good or bad at the time, but I think it was a positive.
So what happened after then? What I'm sure all sorts of thoughts are going through your mind. We would have to spend probably a couple of hours going through everything that you were thinking, all of the pain and the surprise and the anguish, the four stages of anger and acceptance. All those things happen. But what really transpired? Give us a rundown of the events and how and what did you guys do as a family in response to this?
The I remember the lead doctor, I guess the lead ER physician, walked in and he said, "Hey, I got something to tell you, and it ain't good." And so, all right, so that took the
Mm,
wind out of my sails. He said, "Come over here, let's feel his belly." So he grabbed my hand and he pushed down. He said, "What do you feel?" And I said, "Something hard." Like, so the kidney was a cantaloupe sized tumor. It was massive, and
wow.
so speeding up.
Was it both
It
kidneys or
was
just
just
one
one
kidney at
kidney,
that
thank
time?
thank God. But that was the biggest aspect of it, was that massive tumor. Uh,
Yeah.
one of the they go through their spiel and say, "Hey, we're going to get a plan together. You're going to go up to the oncology department. You're going to be there a while. Yeah, we'll get prepped for surgery, do all the things that we need to do." And so then they leave, and so just kind of like sitting there in a whirlwind. The family is just like deer
Yeah.
in headlights, and I get pulled
Mm-hmm.
out to by the lead nurse. His name was Randy Rice, and I wrote about this in the book, so it's in there. And he said, "Hey, come here." And so he took me out in the hall, down to another little isolated room, and he just looked at me. He said, "Let it out. You do it." He said, "Because when you get back in that room, you got to be the rock for everybody in there." And so it was just a moment that I needed, man to man. He didn't have to do that. I'm kind of getting emotional thinking back. I still talk to Randy to this day. God put him
Wow.
there right when I needed the exact thing that I needed. So we got back, and still trying to wrap my mind around what we just found out, and it took a good couple days as we were up in the oncology floor to just kind of get your feet a little bit a little bit under you, and get a
Yeah.
game plan together.
So he went immediately into surgery then,
Yes, I
almost
think
right after the
I
diagnosis.
want to say it was
And,
two
and and
days
so
later.
so
Wow.
so here you are, already have let us know you really didn't have a background as it related to natural health, alternative health, people call it integrative functional medicine. And you're here at a conventionally paradigmed hospital. You've gotten the pronouncement of cancer for your son, kidney cancer. It's already metastasized at stage 4. It's like the worst news ever. you get like one moment to kind of try to recalibrate and hit the pause button, and then you're back out there trying to be the leader of your family. How long after that initial diagnosis that's coming from the conventional medical community did you all of a sudden have some kind of just impetus, urge to say, I'm looking into cancer and other ways that we may facilitate, at least at the very least, have adjunctive therapies for him while he's walking down this road in the hands of individuals that are the experts?
It was pretty early on. I did I don't accept anything really, and so very contrarian by nature. And I just thought this is not completely out of my control. I believe that the doctors will do their part, God's going to do his part, and I'm going to do mine. What is
Sure.
my part? And so I just got my hands on every book I possibly could, watched every YouTube video, and just dove into the research right out of the gate. It was
And did that immediately, though, kind of begin to put those seeds of hope into your heart? Because you are seeing that there are people out there dealing with this in a different way and succeeding?
absolutely, absolutely. I had to just focus on what we could control because there was a very strong aspect of all of it where I could have gotten angry at how contrasted the approaches were. One,
Mm,
one is burn and torch, right, and the other one is how are we just building, and so trying to rationalize that. And I do come from an EMS background, so I was on an ambulance.
okay,
I've seen the end stages over and over and over and over, and so
okay,
that was, I guess, maybe part of my motivation is like, let's don't get there. What can we do?
okay, okay. So you've done YouTube, you're reading books and things like that. What obviously for you, as you said, you're like, I don't accept things. So what can you think of was the first approach that you made? What were you thinking in your mind is, okay, they're going to be, and by the way, tell us, they were going to do surgery? Did they start
Well,
chemo? What all did they end up doing?
they did surgery,
Yeah,
right? Almost like immediately. And so what were they proposing, and what did you end up doing? That's really the
yep.
question
They
here.
did the surgery very very soon. We had 16 rounds of radiation targeted
Oh,
to
wow.
the chest and the abdomen. Just to what I was saying with that on that chest wall, um, and then started a chemotherapy regimen. One good thing about I guess the Wilms diagnosis was there's a very very long history, and as far as pediatric cancers go, that is a much more positive outcome cancer. So I did know that
So the doctors felt that this was treatable at some
they
level.
did
It
that.
wasn't kind
Yeah,
of
they did. They didn't give a terrible prognosis or anything, but I also told them I didn't want the prognosis, just that we were going to do what we had to do.
And so, what were some of the first steps that you took that fell outside of what the hospital was and the oncology group was recommending for
Diet,
treatment? What did you come alongside that
diet,
with? Diet, okay. Tell us
yeah,
about
diet
that.
was absolutely the
And
first.
did it change your life as well? I'm curious. I bet it did.
Absolutely. I had really started focusing more on being physically in a good place right before. Thankfully, he was diagnosed. Or I don't think if I hadn't dropped a lot of weight and tried to exercise and get my mind right, at least it would probably been different out of the gate. But the diet and the first book that I got my hands on was the China Study. And to be
hmm.
completely honest, I'm not there anymore, but at least it did open my eyes that the diet in which we partake has an impact. And so now what that meant
Wow.
is something I've gone down umpteen different rabbit trails. But just removing the junk, that was the biggest thing. I think getting those sugars out of there, all the processed junk. I did remove dairy. I did remove meat. I did limit him to a very what I thought at the time was very clean diet. But yeah, the processed stuff was gone, and I think that was one of the biggest benefits of that.
There's been some studies to show that just recently came out that Statistically speaking, the more somebody eats processed foods, the higher incidence of dementia in older age. So we're finding all these links towards how we consume nutrients, and it's at an intuitive level, it's not surprising, but kind of factually speaking, it was astonishing that, like, wait a minute, why are these highly processed foods contributing to such a long-term negative outcome? And I'm sure we're going to figure out something in the biology at some point, but I think there's a lot to say about how our bodies react to clean foods versus processed foods. Maybe it's the metabolites and the things that come out of those processed foods, or it's maybe the purity of the vitamins and the nutrients that we get from real foods and unprocessed foods. I'm sure it's a combination of all of those.
Oh yeah, enzyme activity,
Oh, that's right.
phytonutrient rich, better quality of
Real
proteins,
living
macro ingredients, all
all
of
that stuff.
Yeah, trace minerals, all of that. It's just it has a huge impact. And I think the thing that's kind of crazy about diet is that we can go along for a long time. A lot of people can go along for a long time, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, boom,
Yeah,
things start happening.
you have
and
these life
changing.
events that happen.
Right. So, what was the course of time when you're talking about 16 radiation treatments and
a
then
lot.
into chemo? How far were you into this journey chronologically? How many months had this been going
Oh
on
Lord,
now?
this was the first month.
Okay.
All of that started, and then the chemo regimen was, well underway.
And was that just like a once a week, twice a week chemo? How were they
Once a
doing
week,
that?
Tuesday mornings, we'd go to clinic, and you get to see all the other babies that are going through stuff, and
Oh my
on
gosh.
the other hand, there were two other Wilms babies, kids, one older, one younger than Lander, that they didn't make it through this whole thing, and so that is where I kept
Wow.
having this stark contrast in how Lander was doing and how other kids were doing. He did lose his hair. I mean, there were definitely things that you knew he had cancer, but overall, from skin condition to the lack of pain, outside of a bowel obstruction, that was an absolute nightmare. But that was caused from a complication of the primary surgery where scar tissue it created a band.
Oh yeah. Created a stricture there.
Okay, so we're going to go right to break now. This is Ultra Life Today. You're listening to Logan Duvall, author of a book called Father's Heart. It's his journey with his young 5-year-old with a diagnosis of kidney cancer that had metastasized to other parts of his body, and how they walked through that and the impact it made on their entire family. You can find it at Barnes & Noble. You can find it at Amazon. Again, this is Ultra Life Today. We'll be back after this segment. I'm Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne, so stick around. Our mission is to take nature's most beloved botanicals and enhance them with our liquid protein scaffold technology. This helps it reach your cells faster and better. With exponentially enhanced bioavailability, you'll feel better every day. Ultra Botanica, the feel-good curcumin.
Welcome back to our second segment of Ultra Life Today, having a really interesting conversation. Have you ever had a relative that had cancer, had a diagnosis that was really dire? How about a child, or even a young child or an infant? Well, Logan's been down that road. We're here with Logan Duvall, author of the book Father's Heart. I'm Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne.
And
we've been discussing kind of the history of what's been going on with Lander. So where do you want to go with this, Josh, with the discussion?
Well, I was impacted about the personal journey as I read through the book. One of the things was it was very apparent to me that this was a huge invitation from God for you to actually lean into, rest in Him, kind of abandon yourself to who he is, and yet at the same time, you felt like you had a mission to do what you needed to do as well. Tell me a little bit about what was going on in you as it relates to
Yeah.
I guess, the call of God, so to speak, and what was happening there.
So, interesting that you asked it at the timing at which you did. So, one of the things I found early on was that supplements and lifestyle and diet all matter somehow. I didn't know what that meant. And so I went to a local health food store, right? I go in there and I'm just looking. I'm just simply walking, looking, trying to become more familiar with what's on the shelves. And the lady, the owner, came up to me and she just looks at me and she said, "Can I say something?" Like,
Wow.
yes, absolutely. She said, "I can feel that you have a lot of hate in your heart and there's a lot of anger." I'm like, "All right, well, thank you
Boy,
for
that was
walking up and telling
bold.
me,"
That
you
was
know?
bold.
And I said, "Okay." She said, "God has put it on my heart to tell you that you need to just look at forgiveness, to forgive
Wow.
so
Wow.
you can be forgiven and get through whatever it is you're going through." And so I am grown man bawling in the middle of a health food store because she was spot on, right? So
Oh
a
my
lot of
Wow.
goodness.
issues that I was holding on to, grudge, and guys, in an absolute instant, I did. I let go of it. There wasn't a lick of that hate and
Wow.
harboring in my body was going to save my baby. And so I
Wow.
went in to the Bible there for a little bit. I left. What do I figure out for Lander, and how do I figure out getting my soul right to go on this
Wow.
journey? And when you look at the Lord's Prayer, I mean, it's right there. You know, forgive those that trespass, so we can be forgiven. I mean, it's right there in the Lord's Prayer. So that was a big one for me, and that is something that's probably the biggest lesson from Lander having cancer that we actually got.
So, Adam, I just have to make a comment and ask for you to comment back, please. I think you and I have talked about this so many times. We have found that a root of bitterness, a root of unforgiveness, a root of aught against your fellow man, whoever they may be, whether they affiliate in any form or fashion with your faith or not, we have found those things really, really just constrict a life, shut a life down, and seemingly just kind of open the door for problems and chaos, don't they?
Well, there's a lot in uh, working backwards from our whole relationship with God. I think forgiveness is the core of our redemption,
It,
right?
well,
It
freely we've received, freely
freely we
give,
give,
right?
right? And then it's and I, I kind of mirror your story, Logan, but it was mine came from a tragedy rather than working out this health drama that you had to live with your son. My best friend died when I was 20 years old. He fell off a cliff, and nobody knew about it. But the day he died, I actually fell deathly sick. I was like on my bed, couldn't
Wow.
move. And so there was like this connection I had with my friend, and there was a trauma that I experienced in my spirit, but I didn't know what it was, and I found out later that he had died the same day. I went through such devastation with that loss, anger. I had real choice words with whoever created existence.
Wow.
And I was not a religious kid. I grew up in a Jewish home, never went to church, but God responded to me.
Sure he
He
did.
he I because it was an honest question. Why do you allow death? Why do you allow this suffering of innocence, of people that are just living life and being are good people, or are just genuine people, loving people, open people, real souls? Why do you allow them to be ripped out of our lives or to suffer so much? And you know what? Over a period of 2 years, the Holy Spirit gently showed me what existence was really all about. And in the end of that whole thing, Logan, he revealed it was two things. I really wanted to know what God's solution was because I saw the problem. The problem was we're in a spiritual reality that is like an exile from the community of real living spirits. So we're in a jail cell for incomplete, poorly functioning spiritual beings here
For
on
the
earth.
millennials, we'll call it a matrix. How's that?
A matrix, yeah, why not? And I was like, okay, so we're lost and we're in prison. So what's your solution, to this problem of death? And God spoke to me, Logan. He said, you're not ready for the solution, Adam. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not ready for the solution? I'm like, oh, you're not ready, but soon I will show you. And I was like, okay, I could receive that. I understood that he was saying I wasn't ready. And I also could understand that I was going to be ready at some point and God was going to reveal his solution to me.
Very nice.
And then a couple months later, God revealed himself to me completely in showing me not the religious form of Jesus the Messiah, but the real loving person of Jesus the Messiah, who came into this life to give each of us a living way into the new life that came
The
through.
friend, the older brother, the master, all
Yeah,
in one. The
all in
teacher.
one.
Yeah.
With the end of it being, Logan, that he is inviting all of us to participate in the power of new life, which came through his resurrection.
Yep.
Right? So we can all be co-participants with him. That's the solution. There is no more death in God, in Christ, that we have been invited into a reality where there is no more suffering. And we can hold on to that even though we're living within the temporal aspect of being in a dimension where there's death and suffering. We know without a doubt that there is eternal life.
Yeah.
And that we are all co-participants.
We're in that journey right now. So you're still in the early phases here. You're going through chemo with Lander. What was it like for him going through chemo? What did you have to do? Did he just come home and was he one of those that chemo was easy for him, or was he one of those that chemo just took it out of him?
Overall, I did very well with chemo, but one of the things that I had devoured so much information. I was able to just piece these tiny
Sure.
little things together. And one of the things that came up, and it was actually on a Dave Asprey podcast, was insulin
Oh, yeah.
potentiated chemotherapy. And so I was like, well, what is that? So what I
That's
did
interesting.
very, very early on was try to understand insulin potentiated chemotherapy. And basically, Lander was always in a fasted state when he received chemo. And I believe that's one of the things that I did without talking to the doctors that made a big impact.
Yeah, you want to just, I know, and our listeners don't realize you're like an walking encyclopedia on a lot of this stuff. I mean, you're a guy I call sometimes and say, have you heard about this ingredient? Tell me about it. So tell our listeners a little bit about insulin potentiated chemotherapy, because I think this is really important for some people that are going to be
Yeah,
viewing this.
in a nutshell, and there's two main things that, as far as if you have immunotherapies or chemotherapies, you need to know about. But with the insulin potentiated chemotherapy, you can make chemo more potent by being in a fasted state than if your insulin levels are elevated. And I think,
Interesting.
Wow.
and I mean, there's a lot of research
Makes
behind this. So by being
There's actually, the whole pathway of ferroptosis
Right.
is really what one of the parts that you're getting at is if we starve the cancers of sugar or glucose metabolism, which there's a whole school of thought actually that cancer is a metabolic disease. And if it's that, because they see that one of the key aspects of most cancer cells is that they rely on fermentation for their energy source rather than respiration. And so with fermentation, the only way you can get your energy is by metabolizing sugars. And so you take away the sugars, you're weakening these cancer cells dramatically.
So how long would an individual that is needing to be in this fasted state need to be fasting prior to a chemo treatment to get the major benefit out of it?
And so I don't know necessarily a time frame, but I know that, from our experience, Lander's blood sugar was between 60 and 70 almost every
Wow.
time that he had chemo. And, that's one of the beautiful things
Okay.
about having the blood work and being able to refer back to numbers.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So, well, that's an interesting key, and I didn't pick up on that the first time that we talked, I believe, on Kyle Drew's radio show. So where did it go from there?
I just
as far as
kept trying to make sure that he never thought he was sick. I think that goes back to the
hmm,
forgiveness was a big thing for me, but also mindset. I never ever wanted him to think he was sick. I never wanted him to think anything that we were doing was something other than getting better. Like, so everything, hey, we're taking this medicine to get better, to get stronger. We're doing this to
That's
get
awesome.
stronger. I dove into a lot of the biohacking concepts, honestly, and so we utilized infrared light from very, very, very early on. A lot of sunlight and energy type things, as far as like grounding. I mean, The Body Electric was a book I read pretty early on too. And so there's a lot of little things that I think
Mm.
matter significantly. Another one that as far as like, a little modality that we used was magnesium baths. His little body was in a magnesium bath, either Epsom salt or magnesium chloride, every single night.
Well, okay, so you're begging the question, why? Well, why? One, and what happened within that experience? What was the purpose of that, Logan?
Adam, I do believe that
I'm just
cancer is a metabolic disease. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I
okay.
think that it's a metabolic disease that's dependent on glucose and amino acids. And so you have to consider the process. So I genuinely believe two of the greatest minds in cancer research are going to be Otto Warburg and Thomas Seyfried. I think those two have
Yeah.
done incredible work, and they have the outline. All right, and when we understand that cancer and all chronic diseases for that matter go back to mitochondrial dysfunction based off of a problem of deficiency or toxicity, inflammation, they're dehydration, cellular dehydration, simply a stress that causes a lot of problems. When we correct these
Hmm.
base level things by proper nutrients, getting rid of toxicities, and giving the body the energy that God designed us to have, a body can really take care of itself.
all right, this is a great segue into, and by the way, those of you who are listening, it's going to be another week if you're listening by radio before it's available, the third and fourth portion of
So, but
this.
before
But
we break, where can people get more information about the book, about Logan's book and
yep.
his experience, and maybe if Logan has a website where people can go to get more
Well,
information?
first and foremost, the name of the book is Father's Heart. It's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Their Facebook page, Me and McGee Market, is the best place to be able to reach out, get in touch with Logan, pick his brain about things. And by all means, if you are traveling across the United States, you need to enjoy the beauty of Arkansas and go down to North Little Rock and hang out with these great people. So this is Ultra Life Today. I'm Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne.
We'll
We'll be right back, but you're going to have to wait a week, so stay tuned.
Yep.